Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services here this morning, we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Loving mother, kid sister to her older brothers, grandmother of 6, a friend to so many, including some whom I heard are here today that she met in kindergarten. Longtime partner to Michael, a champion of the disadvantaged and historically excluded in the world, attorney, loving daughter, and so much more. Today, we gather in loving memory of Anne C. Pearl, who passed away after sundown on Tuesday, the 16th of Tammuz, 5783. I didn't have the opportunity to know Anne in life, only coming into relationship with this family after her passing a few days ago. But I spent some time with those who loved her the most in life, some members of her family, learning about the woman that she was, the deep impact she had, the ideals that drove her life, her passions, some about her health struggles, and about her drive, her class, and her intelligence. It was so clear to me how proud she was to have accomplished so much in her life. She's someone who transitioned from, as a child, being a proud camper at Akiba and being variably called Princess or Anzie, to growing into a woman who, while raising her children, got advanced degrees. She was a proud graduate of Lower Merion High School, going on to get 2 degrees from the University of Pennsylvania, where a number of the members of the family achieved their degrees. And then, with 2 children, going to law school as a mother at Rutgers. You'll hear more about all these things from her family, those who loved her in life, but I learned so much. I learned about her love of travel, of wine, of reading, of the arts and culture, ballet, opera, even convincing Michael of opera's merits in the process. Mostly, I learned about her love of her grandchildren, a love that does not end with death. Memories come to us and remain with us, and we hold them as sacred. Because you see, our Jewish tradition teaches that while the physical body is temporary, the soul is eternal. It's without end. So today, we gather for sacred purpose, to pray for full and complete rest for Anne's body, and as she'll be laid to rest shortly at Locust Wood, we focus on the idea that her soul remains bound to the bond of life. And that means to each of you, as we seek blessings for the continued elevation of her soul. May our time together today have purpose and deep meaning, and may it honor well Anne's memory, who passed away on Tuesday evening. My name's Rabbi Nathan Weiner. I'm a rabbi locally here in South Jersey, and it's an honor, truly, on behalf of myself and my family and all of Klal Yisrael, to be present with each of you today. We note that while this chapel is full of the love and support of those present, there are also many who are joining us virtually on the stream. Hi. We offer you words of greeting and welcome to you as well. Your presence, the family expressed, is deeply felt, and they acknowledged how special it is to have family and friends from all over the country and all over the world joining with us today. So once again, welcome. More formally, we're gathered today to celebrate the life of Anne C. Pearl, Chana Rachel bat Moshe HaKohen V'Sara, Zichronah Livracha, of blessed memory. Anne is predeceased by her parents of blessed memory, her beloved Bibi of blessed memory, her brother Alan of blessed memory. She's survived by her partner of 34 years, Michael. Her children, her daughter Terry and Terry's husband David and her son James. Her step and adopted children, Elizabeth and her husband Brad, David and his wife Marielle, Stacy and her husband Glenn. And her 6 grandchildren, Sylvie, Liliana, Alexander, Emma, Molly, and Michael. Her brother Stephen and his wife Arlene and her cousin Anne. I pray I got every name correct. Good. May your love and care for one another, God willing, carry you through this difficult transition. Now going to recite Psalm 23, a psalm universal across the Abrahamic faith traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam at moments of grief and loss. I'll read it first in the Hebrew, followed by a standard translation into the English. If you're comfortable and wish to, in either the Hebrew and English and are familiar with it, you're welcome to recite it with me. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achzar. Binotesha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek laman shemo. Gam ki elech bagetz al mavet lo iwara ki atay madi. Shiftecha umishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lafanai shulcha neged sorarai. Dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yerdefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Amen. Now going to hear from some members of the family and friends to offer some words of a hesped, a eulogy. And a hesped in the Jewish tradition is designed to uphold the kavod, the honor and dignity of the deceased. First, to share some words, I call Stephen.
To start, I'm extremely honored to be here. I'm so grateful to our family that is visiting us stream. I believe Cousin Ruthie from Israel, I'm not sure. Linda and Martin Lewin from London, with whom Anne had a very special bond. And I hope I didn't leave anybody out, Terry. I don't think so. Arlene and I were married in, will be 65 years. Therefore, Arlene is very much a part of how I feel and what I have to say. Because Anne was 16 years old when we were married. So therefore, while I'm here, Arlene shares all of the wonderful things about my beautiful sister. Anne was born in 1942, February 20th. I was 5 years old, and I remember when she came home from the hospital. Everybody gloated around her. She had beautiful red hair, and she slept in a room adjacent to where my brother Alan and I were, and we would gloat on our little sister. My mother and father were very, very proud of her and were delighted to know that they had a little girl. Her red hair, being very cute, was something that my brother and I marveled about. My mother was considered queen, and Anne was considered the princess. And she was a princess. Beautiful little girl, she was the princess. In our lives, we had a wonderful caretaker by the name of B.B. Dent. B.B. came to our family in 1940. I was 3 years old, and helped raise us with my mother and my dad. And she took a special liking to Anne. Always took Anne to the movies, sit around and read to her, watch television together. And the love and the bond was absolutely tremendous. Anne's friends, who I knew, still know a few that were here today, and Arlene knows them as well, all met in elementary school and have stayed close for all these years, right up until the end. What a blessing that is. I was reminded just a few minutes ago by Jerry Heller how we would play basketball together at our home, and everybody would say, "Where's little Angie?" And she would come outside and serve the guys cookies that my mother made. And there was little Angie. Her girlfriends called her Ann. My brother, Alan, and my friends called her Angie. And to this day, some of my brother's friends are still alive, and they always have asked, "How's Angie doing?" She always called me Stephen, never Steve. Why, I don't know. But you know, that was Ann, and we accept it for what it is. Ann was extremely smart, represented me on a couple of real estate matters, told me to calm down, relax, let her take the ball, which she did. And she did a great job. As Rabbi indicated, she did graduate from Lower Merion High School, University of Pennsylvania, 2 degrees, Rutgers Law School, and yes, she did go to Camp Akiba at 5 years old. And my parents, for some reason, I don't know why, insisted that my brother and I look out for her and take care of her, which we didn't do, for which we got a lot of gaff about that. Ann was a big supporter of gay rights and the black community, for which we are very proud, because that's something that was instilled in us by our parents. Help those that are disadvantaged. Take care of them. Remember the wonderful things that your father and I, my mother would say, we've gave you, and don't forget those that are in need. She was a wonderful daughter, great sister, wonderful mother, grandmother, cousin, especially to Cousin Ann Superfine, who's here with Ben. A friend. Of course, if you had Ann as a friend, there was no compromise. She was there, good or bad. And we all know how important family and friends are. Michael and Ann were together for 34 years. He and she had a great life together. And Ann and Michael adored each other. They shared each other's life's journeys, of which there were many. Michael, you're one great guy. And we are so proud to have you in our family. Terry, what a wonderful daughter. The best. And the bond that she had, not just with her mother, but with her grandmother, Sylvia, her mother, was unbelievable. I'm going to relate one story before I finish, and that has to do with a close friend of ours by the name of Darrell O'Connor, who's here today, and Kathy, his wife. Years ago, I hired a private investigator to find out where BB, who had taken care of us, was buried. He couldn't locate it, unable to find it, because it was important to Ann and to myself to find out where this beautiful woman was that took care of us. Unbeknownst to me, Darrell calls me I think it was, I don't know, Virginia. It says, I'm down here, going over to Kittrell, North Carolina. And I called Ann on the phone. I said, you won't believe this. Darrell has gone down to Kittrell, North Carolina to find BB. Darrell calls me a couple days later. He found where she was buried. I called Ann on the phone, who was hysterical. Couldn't control herself. Well, the family got together. Ann put it together with Darrell, Kathy, Arlene, and myself. Terry was there. David was there. And we drove down to Kittrell, North Carolina. We'd been there a couple of weeks before to arrange for a headstone for BB because there was no headstone. And that headstone has on it BB Artelia Dent Young, and from her family, Ann, myself, Arlene, my brother. And it was very important to her and to us that we have closure to this beautiful woman. And in her name, Ann, on her own, with Michael's help, established a charitable foundation for which Ann contributed to, as well as Arlene and myself and other members of our community, to support young black students in North Carolina so that they would have the books that they needed to study and hopefully graduate and become somebody. And it was critical to Ann that that be put in place. So there's not much else I can tell you about this beautiful woman who I loved and adored. Arlene was her sister. I can only say, may her memory always be a blessing to all of us who are here today. Thank you, Rabbi.
Michael.
Well, first, of course, thank you all for being here. And for anybody who's in the cyber world, thank you for tuning in. I was going to not get up here and give a talk because I'm not entirely sure I can get through it all. And my daughter Elizabeth was going to do it for me. She certainly would have been a better appearance than I do. And she probably would not do it haltingly like I may do. But here I am, and yesterday the rabbi said to us that we ought to keep this short and sweet. And we'll see. I do know that for 34 years, Ann has been my partner, and we've gone through the life that began at that time together. We shared some great moments and some very tragic situations with ourselves and to our families. We had plenty of laughs, and there was, I must admit, more than one time that we had flashes of anger, and we had a disagreement or two. We learned to love each other. We learned to love each other's children. We loved to love each other's grandchildren. Ultimately, as the years went by, and especially in the last 5 to 10 years, Ann and I were together constantly. And we got to know each other in the last 10 years much more than we had learned about each other in the previous 24. She was one of these forces of nature people that you hear some people refer to. I thank Joan, wherever she is, of using that term to me on the phone the other day. And I've incorporated here. Anne was a force of nature, in my judgment. There was not a group of people with whom she was not comfortable. There wasn't a concert, whether in the park or at the Kimmel Center or any other venue, that she would ever decide not to attend. There wasn't an opera at the Academy of Music that she willingly missed. Any arguments in which she decided not to participate were few and far between. She had the proverbial courage to express her judgment on issues, even if those issues were outside the prevailing consensus of the moment or of the group she expressed them to. Thank you, Anne, for being you. Thank you for sharing the way with me. Thank you for your incessant suggestions about where to fly to next. Incidentally, that particular habit of Anne's to say, where are we going next, that would always come up, whether we were, no matter where we were, as the plane was taking off and heading toward here to bring us home, as the wheels were about somewhere between 1 inch to 1 foot off the ground, she would say, where do you want to go to next? And I'm not a great flyer, you know, and I gripped the handlebars or the handles, and I would go, oh, gee, you know, can we land before we decide? And thank you for pushing all those trips to Europe, all the countries. I was going to list them, but I don't remember them all here today. You know, a couple of weeks ago, on a Sunday afternoon, it was raining, Anne was taking a nap. I was watching television, and I saw a movie, and I think it was called either Dublin or another name, another Irish town, I can't remember. And I heard something in that movie that reverberated with me starkly, suddenly, and directly. And when I was trying to think of what to say up here this morning in an effort to try and encapsulate in 5 minutes or something what Anne and I, our life together, I thought maybe I should just tell you about it a little bit. I'll do it quickly. It might have been the movie Belfast. Oh. The movie takes place in Ireland during the Troubles in Ireland in the 60s and 70s. At that time, of course, all the Protestant and Catholic conflict that has existed, unfortunately, in Ireland for so many years was in its heyday. Near the end of the movie was a burial scene. One of the main characters was being buried. And a loved one of that person said that what he said was something that I want to try to express now for myself and for you. And what he said was, it's natural that all of us feel terrible. Those of us who were very close to Anne, her family, very close friends, we really are just torn. And we're devastated by what happened. So we can spend our time saying how unfair it was that Anne had to go through the great difficulties that she did go through, and we can find people or deities to blame, but I'm deciding not to do that. The movie suggested I not do that, and instead just to say that I am so happy that I had her in my life for 34 years. It could have been a lot less. I was very lucky. It was a blessing for me. Thank you very much.
Terry.
I have to, of course, lower the microphone for my height. So all of you know that my mom was an incredibly strong and determined woman. She battled cancer for many years. She worked as an attorney. And as all of you have heard, she had, and probably most of you know, she had a love for arguing. But what you might not know is that those traits were not only passed down by her mother and my grandmother, Sylvia, but by my great-grandmother, Tilly, who I am actually named after. So there was a long line of us. Additionally, which many of you probably don't know, my mom gave me the middle name Beth in memory of her beloved BB, who my uncle just spoke about. So I've had a lot of history and 3 generations of tough women in front of me, of course. So I had a lot to live up to, and especially who I was named for. And I'm very proud to say that both my mother and my grandmother really nurtured me to develop that same kind of toughness and grit that they had. In fact, Michael even called my grandmother Sylvia, Mom, and me the 3 clones. And honestly, he couldn't even tell us apart on the phone sometimes. But I learned a lot of other things from my mother, including the importance of family and taking care of one another. Mom always took care of me, and I'm very sad that I won't have that anymore. I was fortunate to have it for 52 years. But she also taught me the value of friendships. And as my uncle said, some of hers dated back for 78 years, and some of them are here tonight. Thank you. Obviously, the importance of education and excelling academically was very important to her, and she shared that with me. The significance of a strong work ethic and professional dedication, which obviously she demonstrated in her very successful career. My uncle also talked about the importance of equal rights and acceptance for all, particularly those that have been historically marginalized, such as LGBTQ, blacks and other minorities, but even more particularly women. She taught me about the importance of empowering women, of women having their own goals and relying on yourself and not a man. I don't know if any of you know this. I don't even know if Uncle Steve knows this, but she took my brother and I on an ERA march in Atlantic City when I was only 8 and Jimmy was 6. But that was who she was, and she shared that with her children. Obviously, she was pioneering in her own career, and she set an example not just for me, but for other women entering law, and particularly in subspecialties that were dominated by men. Also, as Michael and Stephen said, a love for the arts and culture, visual arts, books and reading, music, and ballet. And many of these passions we shared and were able to experience them together and becoming more important as I became older, so we could do some of that together. And certainly the love of travel and adventure, again, as Michael and Stephen alluded to, but Mom and I traveled extensively, both with my grandmother and ourselves. We traveled across the U.S. We went to Cuba, Panama, Mexico, Israel, France, UK, where our cousins are right now, and the Caribbean. We traveled a lot. She also taught me how to cook, bake, and how to entertain. Though, in honesty, sorry, Mom, my grandmother was really the one who taught me to cook and bake. Mom never accepted that, but that's the truth. And she taught me in her role as a princess an appreciation for the finer things in life, but also about the importance of laughter and joy. Finally, she taught me how to argue and to trade the verbal volleys that she loves so much. Although I know that David now would have appreciated it if she had shown me more how to compromise a little bit better. So although my mom was proud that I learned so much from her and my grandmother and inherited her strength and spunk, she was most proud that I'm raising the fourth clone, my daughter Sylvie, with the same strength and spunk and spirit as my mom. There was nothing more that my mother loved than spending time with Sylvie, whether it was FaceTime gossiping or trading images or hearts or emojis, but reading together, doing Sylvie's homework together, baking, or watching movies. They FaceTimed almost every day. When I think back about the importance of my own relationship with my grandmother and the amount of time that we spent together, it saddens me that Sylvie will not have the same with my mom. But I will make sure that she has the memories of and knows the stories about my mom and develops the same strength and grit that the women in our family have. I will make sure that she remembers you, Mom, and that she makes you proud as the fourth clone. Finally, I just want to thank you, Mom, for all that you did for me, David, and Sylvie. I may not have always said it, but I'm truly grateful for your support, advice, and advocacy. Thank you for always being there for me and my family. I love you, Mom, and I know that you're with Grandma right now, criticizing that my kipples aren't rolled out right and that I need a new couch, and probably yelling at each other at a bridge game. Note that when I'm join you, and I will be there eventually, we will switch to playing Maj and not bridge. Thank you.
And lastly, Janet.
Hello, my name is Janet Gold, and I'm fortunate to count myself among Ann's friends. I met Ann in 1980 when we were both law school students at Rutgers, but we didn't really become friends until 2011 when by chance we were both in Paris and decided to meet for dinner. At that time, my partner Jackie had never met Ann or Michael, and I had never met Michael. But we had a very funny experience at that restaurant in Paris. We ordered a nice bottle of wine. The waiter comes out, shows us the bottle, and then disappears. He came back later with a carafe of wine in one hand and an empty bottle in the other. The four of us, being, conoscenti, looked at each other with skepticism and wondered whether or not it was the wine that we had in fact ordered. There was sort of an awkward pause because we didn't all know each other that well. And finally, Michael spoke up and told the waiter he needed to get another bottle and decant it in front of us. The waiter wasn't happy, but he did it. It became a moment and a memory over the years that the four of us bonded over and laughed about a lot. We all shared a love of wine, food, travel, and mostly each other. Jackie and I were fortunate enough to be able to travel with Ann and Michael in Europe and in the States and had wonderful times together. Ann was great fun to travel with, always finding interesting things to do and researching fabulous restaurants. Our friendship strengthened over the years as we spent more time together. We were part of a small group of friends that would often get together for dinner and had many memorable, fun wine tasting parties at my house. The great thing about Anne was that there was nothing phony about her. What you saw was what you got. She certainly could be direct. She and I had some cases together over the years, in fact, and she was always a staunch advocate for her clients, never minced words. You could get into a heated political conversation with Anne on any given day, but luckily, more often than not, we always ended up on the same side of the debate. Despite her daunting medical issues over the last few years, she managed to inspire us with her determination and her zest for life. And Michael, always by her side, was a loving partner, a devoted caregiver, and a dear friend. We loved Anne, her warmth, her wit, her sense of humor, and her intellect all contributed to making her the important and lasting friend she was to so many of us. Although we will miss her terribly, her spirit will continue to inspire us. She was a very special person, and Jackie and I, as well as all of our mutual friends, feel very fortunate to have been part of her life. Thank you.
It's with these memories and intentions in mind that we move to the central prayer of a Jewish memorial service, El Malei Rachamim, that asks that Anne's soul be granted true rest on the wings of God's divine presence. I'll read it first in the English, followed by chanting it in the Hebrew. If it's physically comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to please rise. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the Shekhinah, the divine presence, in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as a resplendence of the firmament to the soul of Anne C. Pearl, who has gone to her eternal home. For charity has been donated in remembrance of her soul, may her place of rest be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the All-Merciful One shelter her with the cover of God's wings forever, and bind her soul in the bond of life. Adonai is her heritage. May she rest in her resting place in peace, and let us say, Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Al Kanfei HaShechina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Chana Ruchel Bat Moshe HaKohen V'Sara, Shehalcha Le'olama, Ba'avor Shenadvu Tzadaka Ba'ad Hazkarat Nishmata, B'gan Eden Dehe Menuchata, Lachen Bal Harachamim Yastireha B'Seter Kenafav Le'olamim, V'yitzror b'yitzror hachayim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach al mishkava b'shalom, v'nomar, Amen. Please be seated once again. Our time together here at the chapel is drawing to a close. Immediately following our time here, those going to the cemetery will make our way in processional to Locust Wood Memorial Park in Cherry Hill. There are visits of consolation and Shiva minyanim coming up. If you're not coming to the cemetery, the family asks that you please not arrive until 1 p.m. But the visits of consolation and Shiva today will begin at 1 p.m. at the Mober Pearl home on 1 East Riding Drive in Cherry Hill. That's 1 East Riding Drive in Cherry Hill. It will continue tomorrow at the same location between 1 and 4 p.m. and 6:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. Continuing again on Monday at the Pearl Wilson home at 1405 Clinton Street, apartment 204 in Hoboken, New Jersey. If you need that address, again, I invite you to reach out directly to Terry. It'll be on the website. Thank you. All the Shiva Minyan is on the website. Donations in lieu of flowers, please be made to the Concord Community Center, something that Anne cared deeply about, where Bibi grew up, where the church is located, and where Bibi is interred. That's the Concord Community Center, 645 Walter Grissom Road in Kittrell, Kittrell, North Carolina.
We would ask if you would all rise once more, please. I'm going to ask if everyone could please take seats for just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few minutes, we are going to be going into procession to Locustwood Memorial Park. Those of you that are parked in the processional rows, there will be driving directions for the route that we will be taking. Please, if you are going in procession, turn on headlights and flashers, but also please use extreme caution. Funeral processions in New Jersey do not have the right of way, so if you are going through a red light, most people will be respectful of a funeral procession, but just be very careful as you are proceeding through that red light. We're going to dismiss the chapel.